Well, it's a Gold Medal Monday from the Press Box on the Right Team podcast. Once again, I'm David Weaver. He's Matt Paul, and we are basking in the glow of Olympic gold this morning here in this hockey hotbed called East Texas, Matt.
Yes. I can't throw a stone without finding hockey somewhere around here.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's a good crazy, though, man. It's just a great sense of pride. We'll get to that here in just a second. But before we get to our actual show this morning, I always have to take care of the great sponsors from the Press Box on the Right Team podcast here who make our show possible every single day. East Texas Baptist University combines strong academics with championship-level athletics and a Christ-centered mission that impacts every part of campus life. If you're looking for a university that values faith, competition, and community, ETBU is the place for you. Learn more about life on the Hill in Marshall, Texas at www.etbu.edu. And today's show is also brought to you once again by Stiles Electric, based right here in East Texas with offices in Longview and Mount Pleasant. Stiles Electric has been providing dependable professional electrical work for over a quarter century in East Texas and beyond. When experience matters, Stiles Electric delivers service that speaks for itself. And finally, today's episode once again is brought to you by Right Team Services. At Right Team Services, we help schools, small businesses, and nonprofits turn ideas into impact through effective writing, clear messaging, and meaningful connection across your websites and social media platforms. When you need results but don't quite have the words to say, let Right Team Services provide the voice you need. Contact me today at 903-926-1766 or visit our website at www.rightteamservices.net to learn more about how we can help you tell your story. Speaking of gold medals and hockey and all of the things that go into what the weekend has become for all of us, Matt, man, can't forget that we had a golden sweep, actually, is what yesterday meant in hockey over Canada. I don't necessarily have an issue with Canada. I know that's kind of a political hotbed these days. It's not necessarily the fact that we beat Canada. It's the fact that we won that gold medal, right? I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking about all day yesterday. It wasn't anything a swipe at anyone else. Is the fact that we actually brought home the hardware.
That was, I don't know about you. It was news to me that we had not won gold since the Miracle on Ice, which of course wasn't the gold medal game, but you know what I mean. And whatever you want to say, there is no question about which is a hockey country. It's Canada. It's not even a question. We have 3 or 4 sports we're going to favor over hockey in America, but the victory, yes, winning the gold, yes, not beating Canada because I have some problem with them. Never had any problem with them, but the fact that you beat a hockey country to earn that gold medal was just it was of all the Olympic stories we've had in recent years, this one ranks right up there, and there were a whole lot of facets to it that I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Miracle on Ice, which this yesterday will be forever intertwined with that, 46 years apart, and not for a lot more than just the fact that it was literally played on the exact same day, 46 years apart, which was pretty cool. And look, I think it's pretty clear if you've listened to our show for any length of time, we are not necessarily hockey experts.
Right.
We rarely talk about hockey here, if we've ever talked about it at all, until the Olympics. And, you know, it's not necessarily the fact that it's hockey. It's not necessarily the fact that it is USA versus Canada. And you said it. And well, really the cool thing yesterday was when we got home, my daughter, who is 16 years old, she turned on Miracle, the movie.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, you're going to watch Miracle?" And she's like, "Well, it seemed kind of appropriate to do that." And of course, there's a great line in that movie there that by the way, Kurt Russell should have won an Oscar for that, but in my opinion, but he tells the guys in the locker room, he's like, we might play them 10 times and they'd beat us 9. And that's kind of what the feeling was a little bit going into yesterday. Look, these are pro players who are going to go here later this week and resume their pro careers.
Yep.
And they're going to play alongside each other and everything's going to be done and forgotten. But for a 2-week period, these were our boys and they were playing against other boys from other country from other countries, and it just so came down to, yes, Canada is by and large and rightly recognized as the best hockey country in the world.
Sure.
And by all accounts, they were the favorites going into this thing. And so we were the underdogs, not so much as we were the miracle on ice when we beat the Soviets in the semis, but I just remember the feeling of that as a young boy. And I know more about hockey now than I did then.
Yeah.
And it still was just a great thing to see. And I was mentioning to you before we went on the air, I was teaching my life group at church yesterday, and the updates kept coming across my phone, and I had to announce to everyone the score and then eventually the victory. And that was going on at church. So it was going on, at a weird time for us. I know, being in worship and things like that. And you put priorities in place, but man, that was definitely a B event yesterday for us, for sure. A high B.
No question about it. And I just, the storyline that kind of comes out that you may or may, depending on how closely you follow stuff, may or may not been familiar with it, but the player Gaudreau that they lost 2 years ago, his family being there, his kids getting in the picture with them. It's what makes the Olympics just kind of a reminder in the midst of all the showmanship, in the midst of all the money, in the midst of all everything else. The Olympics reminds us of how beautiful and even healing sports can be. And that's what I love about it. And that was on full display yesterday.
Most definitely. And, the iconic pictures coming out of that for me as a old journalist, were telling, with Jack Hughes and missing the teeth. And I was sitting at lunch yesterday with my wife and at Juicy's in Marshall, and we were talking about it. And I said, this kid right here has had his teeth knocked out. And look, this just shows you how much I follow hockey. I thought it was just like an old injury. I just thought he was a kid that walks around with his teeth, as a badge of honor. And then I find out later he actually had him knocked out in the game.
Yeah. And
they had been knocked out before. He had him replaced, and now he got the replacements knocked out. So, he's going to have to go, at some point here and get his teeth replaced again. But, he had a great line. He said, "Hey, I'm from the USA. We have the best dentist in the world."
That's funny.
And so those guys have made themselves heroes. They probably made themselves a lot of money. They got invited to the State of the Union on Tuesday. And again, look, this is not a political thing. And of course, as everything in our world today, folks are wanting to make it a political thing. And I'm not going to allow them to do that. Man, you see the American flag flying behind me here. I'm wearing my red, white, and blue, and I'm proud of it. And definitely proud to be an American on most days, but especially on a day like yesterday. And that's what the Olympics are for.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw, I told you we went home and rewatched it on Peacock. You could just watch a replay of it. And the whole thing started with Kurt Russell narrating it.
Oh, that's
narrating a story about this hockey team and about this match. And it was one of those deals. I'm listening to it. I'm like, I don't know how it was ever possible that we could lose with that going on. I mean, it was really cool.
And, some of the technicalities of it, I know it was a 3-on-3 deal, an Olympic rule where you go 3-on-3, but and I kind of hear that as excuses some, and it's like, hey, you still have the arguably three best players in the world on your side.
Yeah.
And we're playing under the same rules, man, and that's the way it is. And so that gold medal, it doesn't take anything away from the fact that the rules were tweaked just a little bit, in my opinion. My gosh, Connor Hellebuck. Jack Hughes gets all the headlines, rightfully so, but man, he doesn't have that opportunity if that dude's not in your net, for sure.
Yeah, because look, if you want to watch the majority of the game and say who was the better team, if you came out of that thinking, I think Canada was a better team, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, they dominated on shots. They seemed to control the puck. It seemed like we were just playing on our heels for so much of that match. But when you got a guy like that in the net, It's a great equalizer, and he was fantastic.
Interesting to see moving forward if this, provides a little bit of a spark in terms of popularity here in the USA for the hockey sport in general. I know around here, over the last 20 years or so, it's definitely picked up because the stars are around, and
Right.
you actually have a hockey team to follow locally if that's what you want to do. And but will it have any momentum and sustaining momentum? That'll be the interesting thing to say. They said the same thing coming out of the Miracle on Ice, and I do think it caused a little bit of a popularity jump, and then it kind of waned there in the late 80s and got to the point now where, like you said, it's been 46 years since we've had an opportunity to celebrate something like this. So enjoy it while you can, USA, because the Four Nations come back, I think, next year, and Canada will certainly get their opportunity at revenge. But good to see another sport kind of taking hold here in the USA, and hopefully hockey can build on that momentum, even locally, where we don't have ice, but maybe once every 2 or 3 years.
Got the mud bugs.
We do have the mud bugs over in Shreveport, and you have ETBU hockey that you can watch.
That's right.
And get involved in the sport. Okay, let's move on here into our March Madness section here. It's a back row bracketology day. Matt has updated his own version of bracketology. Very interesting here, Matt. Going to allow you to just kind of take the reins here and tell us what you've come up with over the weekend.
Well, so first and foremost, you've got, I don't know if you knew this, but the NCAA committee released their right now what the top 16 teams are on Saturday morning before the games began Saturday. Now, I've told you that my endeavor is not what I think it should be. My endeavor is to try to predict what the bracket will be. And I'm not looking at Lunardi or bracketology on ESPN anymore. But if you're trying to predict what the bracket will be, and the actual committee picking the bracket gives you what their top 16 is, it's kind of like if a teacher purposely leaves the questions on the board for tomorrow's test. You'd be a fool not to use it. So there are a few changes, but, they put out on Saturday that the top seeds were Michigan 1, Duke 2, Arizona 3, and Iowa State 4. And what does Iowa State do? They promptly go on the road to BYU and lose. Houston was right on the cusp. What do? They lose to Arizona, and what was just a phenomenal day of basketball. And before I jump into this, let me tell you, on Saturday night, my wife and I are watching the end of UCLA, Illinois, which 95-94 UCLA's point guard goes the length of the floor in 4.9 seconds to make a layup to win the game. We flip over to A&M Oklahoma, which A&M holds on for dear life at Oklahoma. We flip over to Kentucky Auburn, which Auburn makes a basket with 1 second to go to win that game. College basketball is the most exciting sport in the world right now. It's not even close. So anyway, this is what I've got. And if you put that S curve up there for folks that are wondering, like, you start going left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, but your number 5, you don't go all the way back to the left. Your number 5 is right below the 4, and then you snake back. So it's an S or a snake type thing. For me, the big jump is I think Florida is worthy of a 2. And they're 2 games clear of everybody in the SEC. You look at their non-conference schedule, it was high level. They have won, I don't know, they're 12-2 in the SEC. They lost their first game, so they've won 12 out of 13. They're one of the hottest teams in the country. Oh, by the way, they're the defending national champs. So I'm looking at them as a big mover and shaker. It was a bad loss for Kansas. Darren Peterson actually played the whole game, or 32 minutes. They lost at home to Cincinnati. So Cincinnati took a little drop for me. Looking at some other movers and shakers, not a ton of movement. A big win for St. Louis at home against VCU. VCU, I think, had a chance to move into the bracket with a win there, and they were up by double digits in the second half, and then St. Louis just curb stomped them. Clemson is in a bit of a free fall. They've lost 4 in a row. They were probably projecting a 4, maybe a 5 seed, and now they've lost 4 in a row. So they've been dropping. New to the bracket for me. Well, let me also say, looking at the 9s and 10s, a big win for Georgia over Texas. I don't think that necessarily hurt Texas. Texas already has a home win over Georgia. They split that series now. But Georgia was kind of bleeding out a little bit. They needed something to correct themselves, and they got that. Miami of Ohio is still undefeated, 27-0. Their metrics are not good. But I'm going to tell you, if they go 31-0, I don't care if they lose in the conference tournament. I don't see any way the committee leaves out that team.
Yeah, they'll steal somebody's bid.
They will. So my last one's in. I've got some new arrivals there with Santa Clara and Virginia Tech. Partly because reevaluation of some teams, partly because some teams struggled. Who fell out of the bracket was Missouri. Missouri, that was not a bad loss at Arkansas, but just kind of reevaluating them a little more closely. I bumped them out. USC had a bad loss. They lost at home to Oregon, an Oregon team that's not going to make it. So they fell out. Here's the thing that we're starting to see with the bracket. The bubble is very, very soft. There are a lot of, if you go up at the top and look at some of the 5 and 6 seeds, you look at them and you're thinking some of the best players in the country are on these teams. There are 5 and 6 seeds that are maybe because of those dudes they got contenders to make the Final Four. So we're very top heavy. You look at the bottom right now, and I look at my Final Four in TCU, New Mexico, Virginia Tech, Santa Clara. I don't see a lot of difference between them and Missouri, VCU, Ohio State, USC. I mean, you get outside of that top 45 or 50, it gets real soft. You're going to have to let some teams in that you're like, on a normal year, I don't think you would make it, but we got to fill this out. So sure, here you go. And what stinks is a team like, let's stay local, right? A team like SFA. Stephen F. Austin, who is having a phenomenal year. Okay. I've got them projected, I think. Let me look at that. I've got them projected as a, is it a 12 or a 13? I've got them projected as a 13 seed playing Alabama the 4. Stephen F. Austin has lost 1 conference game. And bear in mind, they play in a conference with McNeese State, who actually went to the second round of the tournament last year. McNeese State's a very, very good team. SFA is 18-1 in conference and 25-3 overall. McNeese is 23-5. They've got another good team in the conference. They're 25-3, David. If they don't win their conference tournament, they're not going to make it.
Right.
We could be looking at an SFA team that comes in, I don't know, like let's just say they lose out in their conference tournament somewhere along the way. And let's say they're, I don't know, maybe like 29-4. So what the committee is going to do is probably put like a 19-12 TCU team over them. And I'm like, why? I don't want to see that. Let me get SFA in there, but it's not going to happen. It's how it always happens. So that's what's kind of a struggle right now is there are some teams, if you look at that S curve, the teams like Belmont and Yale and SFA and High Point and Utah Valley, these are teams that if they're in that 5-12, 4-13, you're like, I don't want to play them. They're really scary. But if they lose in their conference tournament, they're probably not going to make it. The committee's been pretty clear. You got to be like Miami of Ohio. You got to go 27-0 in order to afford a bump in your a hiccup in your conference tournament. So I hate to see that. But this just is what it is. Only other big news, Duke, by virtue of their win over Michigan. I bumped Duke up to the overall number 1. Michigan's the overall number 2. Not a big change, but I just thought they were worthy of that. So that's kind of where I am on it.
Yeah. And as we've thrown this up on our screen, again, just to reiterate, and you mentioned it at the beginning, what the S curve looks like. You guys out there who are listening and watching are seeing the colored S curve part of this. Do not look at that as as your bracket or your regions, right? I mean,
Right.
don't look at that as Duke is number one in a region and Illinois is their number 2 seed. You have to look over at Iowa State to be the number 2 seed in their region, right?
Well, no, actually, it is. It in a perfect world, this would be the case. Like Duke, the number 1, would be facing the lowest number 2, which is Illinois. That is Illinois. But sometimes if you look at Illinois, they should be matched up with Purdue, the 3. They're not going to put 2 teams from the same conference as 2 and 3. So there will be shifting in this, but the S curve is simply my ranking. I have ranked them 1 through however.
This is not what we're looking at here. What I'm trying to get at was this is not the way the 1 through 16 will necessarily look in an entire region. This is your
Right.
S curve. And we have access to, and I can't throw that up there right now, but it's the bracket, which is another tab here on this Excel document that you've used, which shows the actual pairings or your prediction based on your S curve.
Yes. And there are shifts within it because of, like I said, conference affiliations. Like they are not going to put, for example, if you look at the S curve, the number 1 seed Arizona, the 2 that would be in their region is the 2 that's right below them. So Houston would be the 2 in their region. They're from the same conference. They're not going to put a 1 and a 2 from the same conference. So Houston's got to shift over a line, or there's got to be a little shifting. They're not going to shift them way off base, but there will be a little shifting.
Yeah. So there's some science here behind
Sure.
Matt's predictions here, and it's going to be interesting to see as we get closer to March and this actual bracket comes out, just how accurate you are on that.
Yeah,
that's what we're going to be looking for here with that. So we are getting pretty close here, of course, to March. We got another week in February, and then it is officially March, and so the postseason is approaching fast for college basketball. Great work again, Matt, and again we will have back row bracketology on Thursday's show as well, an update, and then we'll move, of course, to next Monday with it as well. Monday and Thursday rotation for this. Great job.
Thank you.
Wanted to go ahead and also mention just very quickly on the women's side, very little movement done in terms of their predicted bracket on the ESPN bracketology for the women. There was no change probably at the top in terms of the top 4 seeds. All 4 of those got through the weekend relatively unscathed. UConn wins 81-38. UCLA goes into or hosts Wisconsin, comes away with a 20-point win there. And then, of course, South Carolina almost doubled up Ole Miss, 85-48. And then Texas gets a big 50-point win at home over Mississippi State. So the top 4 seeds are probably going to be relatively unchanged when that bracket is updated actually, I believe they updated on Tuesdays on the women's side. There were some mild upsets, particularly in the ACC. If you look at the ACC from yesterday, Virginia knocks off number 8, unranked Virginia knocks off number 8, Louisville, 74-72 on the road at Louisville. Clemson on the women's side hosted Duke, which is ranked number 9, and Clemson comes away with a 53-51 win. So some shaking up going on there in the ACC on the women's side. And again, their bracketology will update on ESPN on tomorrow. So some things moving and shaking on the women's side as well. And I'll tell you, you can predict here this time of year.
Yeah, one of the most curious things I think about that, if you look at what the bracket was heading into the weekend on ESPN's bracketology, Clemson and Virginia were 2 of the last 4 teams in. And they get massive wins over top 10 teams. That's how you move off of that bubble. That's how you move into something, like you and I have talked about on the men's side, Texas, right? And Texas is not off the bubble, but they're off of that last 4 in. Well, you want to know how they effectively completely move off the bubble? They host Florida this week. You go win that game, you might be safe as soft as this bubble is. So those are huge wins for Clemson and Virginia on the women's side.
Coming around here to our neck of the woods here in Beast, Texas, as we call it, we obviously have a full slate of both boys and girls playoff games starting actually tonight with the boys playoffs in the area. Matt, I have updated the schedules on the girls' side and on the boys' side. I've spent my entire weekend tracking down times and locations, and I'm proud to say, kind of outdoing Max Preps.
Yes, sir.
That information. That is available on our Facebook page. We don't really have the time this morning on the podcast to go through every single game, but just know that the girls are now down, of course, to the regional semifinals. We will know who advances to Austin, or actually is it San Antonio, I believe, this year for the girls' finals. They're in the Alamo Dome where they will be playing the UIL finals, state championships. But the girls actually will be closing out their region play. So their playoff field is narrowing as we go into this week. And the boys are tipping off their playoffs this week, of course, tonight. Big game for you, of course, as you're wearing your Maverick red, I see. And the Mavs will be on the road taking on a very talented Anna team there in Athens this evening. So any thoughts going into playoff week here, particularly for the boys, just off the top of your head?
You know, kind of looking at what you've put up and kind of some of these, I always like to keep it local, some of these local games. Tomorrow night, Elysian Fields with they open up out at Panola College, I believe, against Shelbyville. You know, Elysian Fields is fascinating to me. You know, you got some basketball players that were out there winning baseball games for them on the mound and catching and whatnot this weekend, and now they're getting back into the swing with basketball. To me, what I really want to talk about, and I'm going to talk a little bit about on my back page a little more about the Marshall game, but you know, we talked about this 5A district in our area that all the girls lost. All the girls teams lost in the first round in that, I believe it's 5A District 9, Region 3, I think. All of them lost. I'm curious to see how the boys fare. Tyler High against Melissa, Lufkin against Prosper Walnut Grove. Those are the two Division I schools there. And, you know, Lufkin playing Walnut Grove, it's very similar to the White House in the girls' side. Lufkin's number 4 in the state. You'd like to think they're going to take care of business there, but you get in among those DFW schools, you never know. So I'm curious about that one. And then on the smaller side, Division II, you've got Marshall against Anna. That's kind of a David Goliath matchup. I'll mention that in a moment. And then Mount Pleasant and Lovejoy. Which Mount Pleasant, an established program, but here again, playing a DFW area school. So I'm curious to see how that one goes. Really curious about the Tuesday night game, Lindale and Kilgore. That just seems, I mean, right in your backyard kind of matchup. I think that will be a really, really good one. Other than that, Jefferson and Atlanta, boy, they can't get away from each other. That is coming up Tuesday night. The Jefferson boys have been very, very solid. Also, I'm kind of excited. I get to be on the horn for a couple games tomorrow night at Marshall High School. They're hosting a doubleheader. See that?
Yeah, Hallsville's actually hosting a doubleheader as well tomorrow night, or has. I know for sure they have Tatum and Mineola, and no, it is a doubleheader. I'm looking at it right here. Tatum and Mineola at 6 o'clock. Followed by Mount Pleasant, Chapel Hill, and Redwater at 8 o'clock right here in Bobcat Coliseum, which is just around the corner from where I'm at currently. So a lot of basketball action here going on. If you want to go view some really good playoff basketball, you should have a place close to you here in East Texas where you can find something here the next couple nights.
I'd say I'm excited tomorrow night at Marshall, McLeod and Mount Enterprise. I don't remember if he was a senior, but I covered a game for McLeod last year. They had a 7-footer. He shot all threes. So I'm thinking if I had a 2A 7-footer, we're going to figure out how to score inside. But I'm curious about that one. And then the other game at Marshall is Liberty Ilo and Dangerfield. Let me tell you, Liberty Ilo, that's one of the top 10, 12 teams in the state. I've seen them play this year. That ought to be we'll see if Dangerfield can hang with them. I've seen them as well, but Liberty Ilo's good.
Quickly here, just kind of give you a little bit of an insight on what the girls are facing on the girls bracket. Of course, these are region semifinals taking place either tonight or tomorrow night. Some games I'm looking at here that I think would be really interesting to watch just based on rankings or records. You got Canton, which is 29-7, playing Dallas Lincoln at 25-8. That game will be played over at Kaufman High School, just there south of Terrell. So a little bit kind of out of our range there, but that's going to be an interesting matchup there between two really good teams. Liberty ILO comes into the regional semis at 31-4. They're taking on a Ponder team, which is 24-12. They're in 3A D1 Region 2. That game's being played at Sulphur Springs. And as I go down through here as well, some of our local teams, I'm really interested to see how San Augustine, which knocked out, of course, Elysian Fields last week here locally. San Augustine's probably considered, at least for you and I, probably the very southernmost part of our area here that we'd like to cover.
Yeah.
The Right Team podcast. But they are getting a very talented 29-4 Leon squad on Tuesday night at Cushing High School. Be interesting to see how the Lady Wolves fare against that. They're a pretty talented basketball team.
Yeah.
And of course, Harleton's taking on a big challenge with Martin's Mill Tuesday at Tyler Legacy High School there in Tyler. So I'm interested to see how the Lady Wildcats fare against a pretty good basketball team from Martin's Mill.
Yeah, that's a ranked matchup. Of course, Harleton, last I saw, number 24. Martin's Mill, I believe, number 4. Martin's Mill is just kind of a cool basketball program. I remember the first time I saw them, and their jerseys just said the Mill, which I thought was pretty
great.
cool.
Great.
But yeah, it's Harleton, just a gritty. They're a gritty team. They're like, hey, let's go play this basketball game in the back alley and see if we can come out on top. And Martin's Mill is just going to be this team that plays. What is it they used to say about Brazil and soccer? They play the beautiful game. They are going to move the ball well. They are going to have a system that just plays really high level basketball. And Harleton, the more they can gum that up and the more they can make this just a knockdown drag out. I'm not talking about like a physical punching game. I'm just talking about we want to see it in single digits at the end of the first quarter. We want to see a halftime score where it's like 15-12. That's what they want to see. If they can make it that kind of game, the longer it goes, the more they're going to be at home with it. But make no mistake about it, it's a tall task for the Lady Wildcats. But hey, third round of the playoffs, if you made it to this point, I don't care. I don't care how you got here. It's a heck of a season.
Just numbers alone, you're halfway to a state championship. I mean, just look at it that way in terms of how successful your season was. Okay, moving over to the college ranks here locally, of course, number 21 ETBU baseball took it on the chin over the weekend. Actually, number 24 ETBU, they're ranked 24th. They go on the road to Jackson, Mississippi against an old rival, number 21 Belhaven, and get swept there on the road. Tough weekend for Coach Jared Hood and the Tigers as they continue to kind of get their legs under them here. Still very early in the season, just a couple of weeks in, but that was a probably a little bit of a humbling trip for the Tigers, and got a lot to learn from that as well, taking on that sweep.
And tough weekend for ETBU as a whole, which is weird to say. But I feel like I can't remember a time when we're coming on. We might report on the occasional loss, but their athletic programs are so solid to look at a weekend where baseball got swept, which is rare. Men's and women's basketball both lose at home on senior day. It was just, now, of course, for the men's and women's basketball, it didn't really matter.
Right.
You're going in the conference tournament, win 2 games, and all's
They
well.
didn't have to win a conference game to qualify for their conference tournament.
That's right. So, and I see you got on here the ASC men's and women's tournament get underway Friday. I'm sure we'll preview that more later on.
We'll get to that on Thursday, most likely. Some more information there for you. But again, the Tigers and the Lady Tigers fall at home to Hardin-Simmons, which won both parts of the quote regular season championship in the ASC. They will be hosting the conference tournament out in Abilene this weekend. With those semifinals, ETBU will the men will take on UMHB Friday at 5 o'clock in one semifinal, and then the ladies will kick off their tournament run with a noon tip-off against Howard Payne. Again, both those games being played on Friday in Abilene at Hardin-Simmons.
See how that goes, and I'll update you a little more on Wiley University. Began conference play in baseball with winning 2 out of 3 against Houston Tillotson. So I've actually got Kendrick Biggs coming on my show Wednesday on KMHT to talk about the baseball season up to this point. And still, the fact that they got a win over a D1 squad, I think, is massive. I can't wait to talk to him about that. We mentioned that last week. Also for Wiley, they're in their conference tournament, the men and women. It's there ain't no 4-team tournament for in Wiley's conference. It is somewhere in the teens, the number of teams. I've lost track of it, but the Wiley men play tomorrow. And lost that time. I believe it's in the afternoon. They open against Oakwood. They have to play in the first round. Now, the women who I shared last week won their division. They won the west side of the conference. They get a double bye into the quarterfinals of the tournament, so they don't have to play until Thursday. I have no idea who they're going to play because a handful of games have to play themselves out before we can see that. But if you remember, I told you, if you finish, their conference is such a large size that if you just make the conference championship, you're going to the NAI national tournament, which means the Wiley women only got to win 2 games, and they will be there. So anxious to see how they do. Going to be keeping up with that throughout the week.
A lot of games if you have to start out at the very beginning and play all the way through.
I think the men have to win 4.
Yeah, that's a tough
days.
chore. Yeah, for anyone, but particularly in a big league like that. So mention to see how the Wildcats at Wiley University, and I'm going to apologize. At some point, I may call them Wiley College. They are officially, of course, Wiley University now. So I'm having to train my brain a little bit, focus on the university part of that.
It's right up there with Tyler Legacy and Tyler High, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Speaking of Tyler Legacy High School, I ate dinner across the loop over in Tyler on Saturday night from Tyler Legacy High School. Had to explain to my daughter, who is a Apache Bell at Tyler Junior College, that used to be Robert E. Lee High School, Tyler Lee High School. And of course, she's never known it really more than anything than Tyler Legacy. But my wife and I went over there and watched. She was performing at the TJC men's basketball game Saturday afternoon. So I got to watch a little bit of junior college basketball over there, and they had a big win over Coastal Bend College. The Apaches did. So anyway, that's how I spent my Saturday watching a basketball game. What else can you do this time of year other than watch Olympic hockey, right?
That's right. That's right.
This brings us to the back page portion of the podcast today. And Matt, I'm going to let you lead off here with some things that have come across your desk here on the back page, so to speak, over the weekend. Just tell us some things you found interesting.
So I debated how much I was going to talk about the Marshall playoff game, and I think I'm going to wait till tomorrow because right now I have no idea how I'm going to feel after tonight. I know that the odds are this is the last game that my son's going to play. And so, but you never know. One of the great things about basketball, like we talked about with SFA and some of these schools, like basketball, we've seen it. We've seen the David topple Goliath time and time again. Senior night very much had a feel of like when those small schools win their conference tournament and it's just like, oh my gosh, we're going, and you're just elated. It very much had that feel. So I'm going to hold off until tomorrow to kind of see where I am on that, because right now I'm just all over the place. I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you saw this. I mean, yesterday was all about hockey, and then I'm tuning in for a couple of college basketball games in the Big Ten. I'm watching Michigan State and Ohio State, and I'm watching Wisconsin and Iowa. But last night, one of the greatest rivalries in all of professional sports happened. And it was the Celtics and Lakers. We're playing each other in LA. I would be interested in your opinion. I don't think there's any more iconic color scheme for a rivalry than there is in this one. The purple
maybe
and
the
gold
most identifiable. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just
both ends of the spectrum. You cover all the colors basically.
You cannot top it. And so, but I don't know. I did not realize this at the time. My son, older son, he's a LeBron fan, so he's rooting for the Lakers. I'm a diehard Celtics, so is my younger son. And at halftime, they honored Pat Riley. There's a statue being built of him. First of all, I got to give him credit. The dude's almost 81 years old. And, sometimes when you get older, your voice gets a little unsteady. and you have to kind of shorten what you say in it. Very eloquent, very well spoken. I mean, you had Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Byron Scott, AC Green, some of the older players even before that. I mean, you had all the greats. I thought it was hilarious that Pat Riley said he looked at them and he said, "I want to commend James Worthy for being the only one to show me respect because he's wearing a tie," and everybody laughed. And he said, "The rest of you will be fined." It was a really neat moment. Brought back the history. I mean, Showtime really did kind of transform the NBA, and the Celtics Lakers rivalry really did that, along with MJ coming on the scene, really staved the NBA, because a lot of people don't know that heading into the 1980s, people didn't know if the NBA was going to make it. But I also want to point out, as a fan, the Celtics were up by 10 going into half, and I saw that and I was like, we're not going to win this game. The fans are all up, fired up. You get Celtics beat them by 22 in LA. It was just kind of giddy. Enjoying.
It was not a banner night for the Lakers to have all of that franchise glory there in attendance and watching that.
No, it wasn't. So obviously I've got to mention that because the Celtics beat the Lakers, but also it really is like Showtime LA, the Boston LA rivalry. If you don't have Magic and Bird doing what they did and then Jordan coming on the heels of it, there's no telling what, if any, NBA we have. And so that was kind of cool. And the icing on the cake was Boston just curb stomped them. So I loved it.
The NBA has transformed itself in a way that if you did not get to experience the Celtics Lakers in the 80s, the Bulls and the Pistons in the late 80s, early 90s, if you didn't get to experience any of that, you don't understand what true rivalries are.
Yeah.
I mean, those went deeper than basketball rivalries. I mean, those teams generally did not like each other.
Yep.
And it was so fun to watch, even though basketball, some people don't like the rough and tumble. I mean, there were no easy layups back in those days. And that brings up an interesting question. I'm glad you brought this up. I just want to get your opinion on this. In my opinion, there's not a whole lot of X's and O's that you can do as a coach in the NBA, right? Really, you are managing personalities.
Yeah.
Because of the emphasis on the players, which probably is what's built the NBA. It's all about their players.
Yeah.
Who was better at that, in your opinion, based on what he had to work with? Was it Pat Riley or Phil Jackson? I mean, they both had similar success, right? I mean,
they did. I'm going to say, I don't know who is better. I'm going to say Phil had the tougher job. Because I don't know that people, first of all, he had Dennis Rodman at one point. So that, and no one ever, once Rodman transformed into, I don't know what word you want to do, the Rodman we all know. A lot of people don't realize when he was with the Pistons, he was very good and he was not this headliner personality. But by the time he got with the Bulls, he was. And Jackson, a lot of people don't know. If you have never watched the Last Dance documentary, oh my gosh, it's one of the best things you'll ever watch. But I mean, they let Rodman just take his motorcycle to Vegas in the middle of the season one year because they were like, look, he's about to pop. We've got it. And so also, I don't think people realize what it was like with Jordan, and the closest thing personality wise, I'm not saying player and career wise, but the closest thing personality wise we've had to Jordan was Kobe, and Jackson coached both of them. And there's this famous time when he just looks Kobe Bryant in the eye and says, Kobe, who's open? There are these times when he did it with Michael as well. And one of the most iconic shots of the Bulls run was Steve Kerr hitting a big time shot, was John Paxson hitting a big time shot. And Jordan was a killer personality, but Jordan was a little bit psycho. And I don't think people realize it. Jordan would create reasons. This is what The Last Dance highlights, would create reasons to get angry at a team. Like there are times he would publicly state that the guy from Washington said this about us, and they interviewed the guy from Washington. Like, I never said that. But Jordan not only said it, Jordan made himself believe it, and it made him angry. I mean, it's just so I've got to give a nod managing personalities to Phil Jackson, just because I think he had some of the toughest ones to manage.
Oh yeah, I agree. And I agree with that as well. I just kind of wanted to get your take on it. It was a little bit of a different era, although they kind of intertwined with each other there at the end, kind of overlapped a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier with a team led by Magic and Kareem and James Worthy than it was, as you say, all of those personalities, particularly in really two different eras. There was the first era where the Bulls were trying to catch the Pistons. They caught them, and then they won their first three. Jordan retires. He goes, plays baseball. He comes back. The Bills were horrible. People forget the Bills were horrible when he left that team. They weren't very good. And of course, he comes back, and then all of a sudden they go on another run. They win 3 in a row, and there was a completely different team there. And Phil had to manage all of that. By the way, he jumps into the Kobe and Shaq mess there in the early part of the 2000s and continues to do what he does. Just a master – I don't want to say manipulator, but he understood, like you said, when Rodman needed to go to Vegas, and it was best to allow him to do that for the good of the team.
Which sounds like a horrible thing to do, and yet it was exactly the right move. You had, and this is what people don't do in sports. We can do a whole podcast on this. They don't think outside the box. They don't think outside the box. Let me tell you, when you don't think outside the box, you draft Sam Bowie instead of Michael Jordan. You draft Greg Oden instead of Kevin Durant. Which
you trade Luka Doncic for Trae Young.
Right. Which, by the way, those first two were all the same team with Portland. So, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, my part of this, just very quickly, again, I've gotten into, I've saved these things on my little Twitter feed and as bookmarks, and these were some things that kind of stood out to me over the weekend. And again, everyone knows I bleed burnt orange around here. The University of Texas has now won 27 straight conference men's swimming championships. Let me say that again. 47 straight championships in men's swimming. People say
that's conference championships.
That's conference championships.
Oh.
47 straight. This was a tweet that was put out by Bobby Burton, who is a Texas insider and recruiting analyst, and so he knows Texas. I mean, he didn't know that if this was a record or not.
Yeah.
But when he asked this question on Twitter, there were some answers on there that I believe came from a D2 squad or a D3 squad in some off the wall kind of sport. And apparently, let me see if I can pull it up here on my comments here, but 47 at the D1 level at Texas. I don't care what sport that is. That's impressive.
That to me puts Texas swimming up there with Iowa wrestling and Arkansas track and field as just decades long dominance.
I'm going to tell you something. Having worked in a college athletic department at the D3 level, it doesn't matter if it's swimming, if it's men's tennis or women's tennis or cross country. That's an impressive streak to be that consistent at it. Apparently, and that really ranks number 2 overall in terms of historical marks. This is a tweet that was answered that on Twitter, that the Day Room Experience put this out, that it ranks second only to Kalamazoo College, which is a Division III school. Apparently, they had a 74-year run of men's tennis. I don't know how you keep up with that, unless maybe you're a one-team conference. It's just interesting that happens. But congratulations, man, to the Texas men's swimming team. That's an impressive run, particularly at that level.
Incredible.
Some sad news, of course, coming out of the NFL over the weekend. NFL wide receiver who was on the Minnesota Vikings roster, Rondale Moore, passed away Saturday from a self-inflicted shot wound. Second, somewhat high-profile suicide by an NFL player, of course, this year. We go back to the fall with Marshawn Milan and the Cowboys. Rondale Moore, of course, probably gained his most fame. If you remember that one night at Purdue where I can't remember who they beat. Was it Ohio State?
It was Ohio State.
It was Ohio State that they knocked off there. Probably the biggest win in Purdue history since the days of Drew Brees.
And you had that kid, that young man with cancer who was there at the game.
Yes.
It was an electric night. Rondale Moore was on that particular night, and he was to an extent his whole college career, but on that particular night, he was the most electric. He was one of the top 5 most electric players in college football history. And,
yes.
And a crazy thing about that night, looking at it now, you've got Rondale Moore, who was the stud star at Purdue. Do you know who the star was at Ohio State that night? Quarterback Dwayne Haskins.
Yes.
Both of them now. Both from that game, that memorable game, both of them now have passed on. It's just crazy.
I remember Rondale Moore as a one-time Texas commit under Tom Herman back in the day of Tom Herman. And in the end of the day, he elected to flip his commit and actually go to Purdue, which I think he had some family ties there. And I always admired that, him being a big-time star and choosing to go to a place like Purdue to play football rather than take the easy route and go be a star at Texas, which, would probably been a little bit better for him for his career. He did apparently struggle with some injuries and the mental aspect of that. It is what it is at that level when you're always hurt and can't contribute the way you want to. And obviously some other things going on, but that young man decided to take his own life on Saturday at the age of 25. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone affected by this, of course, his family and friends. And, it's just another sad deal that goes on against, it's not all about glory and honor and things like that. It comes on a football field. These guys have some real things that they are dealing with off the field as well.
They're still people.
They're still people when it gets right down to the core. You are correct. The other thing here, again, kind of circling back to college basketball that I noticed, I don't know if you saw this over the weekend. Dick Vitale, it was good to hear his voice calling the Vanderbilt Tennessee game on Saturday. Yeah. I watched that game just to hear Dickie V on the call. He's still as good as ever. He put out a tweet on late Saturday night. And it says this: sometimes a divorce is good for everyone involved, and I firmly believe that needs to happen now at Kansas. The Darren Peterson soap opera needs to end. It has been a nightmare for all involved, so sad as Darren's talent is off the charts. You mentioned, of course, that Peterson did play 32 out of the 40 minutes on Saturday in a huge loss at home to an unranked Cincinnati squad. But of course, last week, and we mentioned this as well, he took himself out of a win over Oklahoma State. And there's an image of him just sitting on the bench, basically by himself. Bill Self, the coach, has taken all kinds of heat for this. It's, there was also a tweet I read later that said he had a closed door meeting with the AD and the head of the boosters at Kansas. And this thing is, again, I have some really good friends, again, who are Kansas, KU blew and through. And I'm telling you, man, this is a problem for them. And Bill Self is caught in the middle of it. And it's really sad to see a Hall of Fame coach kind of be neutralized in all of this. There's really not a whole lot he can do in between the talent and the NIL part of it. And he had a great quote last week after the Oklahoma. He said, hey, the only way that this goes away is if he just finishes the game. It goes away. But I don't think the player necessarily cares. It's obvious he's biding his time till he's doing what he's asked to do, which is play a year in college, and then he's going to the NBA. The problem is the way he's getting there. If I'm an NBA GM, I'm not taking a chance on this kid when I got a Debansa or a Cam Boozer out there at the top of the draft, personally.
Gosh, did you see Debansa Saturday night?
In my opinion, he solidified himself as the number 1 pick.
Holy cow. And so and here's the weird thing about this to me is I've seen stuff like this happen before. And Saturday's game aside, that was an ugly game. Now, bear in mind, Cincinnati has already beaten Iowa State this year, so they've clearly got something in the tank. But by and large, the team's performance has not been affected by this. They are tracking to be somewhere between a 3 and 4 seed. They have wins over Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State. Like, I would expect, if this kind of issue was going on, I would expect this team to be like, I don't know, why are you with all that talent like an 8 or 9 seed? Why are you barely getting into the tournament? No. They're firmly in the tournament, clearly a national title contender, which makes you wonder, how good are they actually? And if you remember when they beat Arizona, there was no Darren Peterson. Like, it's a weird scenario because, like, Peterson is an exceptional talent. There's no doubt about it. But also, like, you kind of sometimes don't need him. Oh, I don't know. I can't wait.
He's talented enough without him. And I think this whole thing is it just appears from someone looking on the outside that it can galvanize the rest of your team. And in many ways, bring your locker room closer together outside of Darren Peterson because of all the drama that's going into this. And they do appear to play a lot better when he's not involved because of that. It's kind of like a circle the wagons mentality. And look, Bill Self taking all this heat, man. I mean, that guy's a Hall of Fame coach. And he's just, again, as I said, he's caught in the middle of this. And I'd be interested to know if he was really truthful what he thinks about it.
But, you know, there ain't no way this caught you off guard when you signed Darren Peterson. Yeah. I'm sorry. You had to have known maybe you didn't know the full extent of it, but you had to have known to some extent what you were getting into with this young man. Because I look at him and I look at the way Debanza, Boozer, Darius Acuff, Wagler at Illinois, and the way they blend with their other teammates and everything, and the way they, like, Debanza, we all know he's done, but you go watch him play for BYU, and he is in this thing to win this thing. This means something to him. Darius Acuff, Boozer, it means something to them. It doesn't mean a thing to Peterson. It's weird.
Right. I mean, I just go back to the example of Cooper Flagg last year. Right? I mean, he played to lead Duke to a national championship in the 1 year that he was going to be there. He knew it. But it didn't affect his play on the court. He was still a competitor, and it was all about winning. I don't know. It's just not a very team-friendly situation that this young man is presenting. And, you know, without him necessarily speaking on it, we're left to go with what we see with our own eyes. And, you know, if he's hurt, he needs to say he's hurt. He needs to come right out and say it, you know. And so anyway, that's a continuing drama that'll be interesting to see how it affects Kansas down the stretch and into the tournament.
Tonight,
as you said, I could see them being a flame out in the first round. I could also see them potentially making it to the Final Four. They're that talented, but you just don't know because of this hanging over them for sure.
Well, and tonight you're playing Houston. Big time game coming up. You know, I've heard his allergies are acting up, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes.
Moving on to this date in sports history as we come to the end of today's episode. Staying in the world of college basketball, Matt, and I know you remember this, on this date back in 1985, remember Indiana coach Bob Knight. This is the famous video of him throwing a chair onto the court during a game against Purdue. Of course, he had enough of the officials that night at Assembly Hall, and he just decided he'd throw a chair across the floor.
Love it.
He was indeed ejected, of course, but the Hoosiers rallied to win that game, 72-63. So the general got his wish that night and went back to the locker room but got a win for his team. I won a chair, right? You don't see that enough anymore. You don't see guys throwing chairs.
No, you do not. We need more of that.
We need professional wrestling in college basketball. And then on this date in 2021, Tiger Woods crashed his car driving south of Los Angeles, broke both his legs. The only reason I mention that is that Tiger has not won a major since. He has not been the same player since that accident. He has not won. He won 15 prior to that. And of course, you know, he was supposed to be the next Jack Nicklaus, and he's not going to get anywhere close to that because he's not the same player.
What year did that happen?
2021. So that was 5 years ago today. And I saw Tiger on an interview over the weekend. He looks every bit of his 50+ years that he is now.
Yeah.
He's an old guy. Shame, but he has not won a major tournament since that accident. Finally, here today's birthdays to celebrate in the world of sports. In 1937, the great Nebraska football coach Tom Osborne was born. Of course, he got his couple of national championships in the 90s, but I'll forever remember him from my childhood as the one who went for 2 in the 1984 championship game in the Orange Bowl against Miami, and was unsuccessful at that. But no doubt he had the best football team in the country that year. And I have to tip my cap to a guy who'll go for 2 in that situation.
Yep.
Also born on this date in 1951, former Dallas Cowboys defensive end Ed Too Tall Jones was born. Remember Too Tall?
Wow. Ed Too Tall, yes, sir.
Too Tall right now would be considered a linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah.
He would just be right in there against all the other tall guys.
Yeah.
Back in the 1970s and 80s, he was pretty big. And then finally, and I just mentioned this because of the irony of it, 1963, former Pirates, Mets, Orioles, and Marlins outfielder Bobby Bonilla was born. And, of course, we probably have coming up here pretty quick, Bobby Bonilla Day. You know what Bobby Bonilla Day is? It's the day he receives another $1 million check from the New York Mets. So,
and he was born in 63, you said?
1963. So that would make him today probably what?
63.
63. That's right. So
and he's still getting $1 million. Good for him. But hey, it got the Mets several World Series championships.
It did.
Right?
It did. Just cash the checks, Bobby. Living that best life today. Our final word of the day comes from 1 Corinthians 10:31. It says, so what, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Just like in sports, effort matters, but motive matters more. When your motive is to bring God the glory, even the ordinary moments become extraordinary. Amen to that.
Yep.
For my good friend and broadcast partner, Matt Paul, this is David Weaver thanking all of you again for listening out there in East Texas and beyond. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow from the press box on the Right Team Podcast. And until then, as always, keep writing your story.